I think you gotta have all these different options for them to interact with you. And then at one point they buy, right? They buy when they're ready. They already trust you and all those things. Because we did only the first piece really well in the beginning of the company, where we had a very good conversion funnel for them to go from like Google to our website and put their info and capture who they are. But then like our conversion rate on the sales side was really poor because we had all these leads, great leads, great companies, but nobody would buy from us. And then we figured out that it's because like our competitors, they're hosting all these dinners and trade shows and we're doing none of it. So they don't trust us as much. They know, like we had a meeting with them, but they're saying, I'm going to go with them because I never had the chance to connect with you in person, right? So working on the second part of the pipeline, the trust build up is also really important, at least I think.
Welcome to the Product Tea with Leah. I am your host, Leah Dara, and we are about to spill the tea with the best from tech about product growth and senior leadership topics. Good morning, everyone. Today we talk to the founder of InEvent, a company that changes the event marketing and sales landscape for global giants such as Amazon, Coca-Cola, KPMG. His accolades include being a Y Combinator alumni, recognized in the prestigious 40 Under 40 by Association magazine, claiming titles like the UK Event Tech Award and the Gold Crocodile Award. If I would give him an award, though, then it would be about integrating GDPR, SOC 2, and ISO 27001, that kind of award. He excels in understanding customer needs and delivering innovative solutions that not only meet but exceed their technological and operational needs. Welcome to the Product Tea, Pedro Goés. It's very nice to have you. How are you doing this morning?
Yeah, I'm doing well. No, it's good morning. No, cannot complain. I like hot weather from Atlanta. That's just my vibe. But in 6 months will be really cold, so I'll probably go somewhere else.
So you're following the sun, is what you're saying?
Yeah, I'm from Portugal, so I like to go to places where it's warm usually, or I can go down to Miami as well. It depends, but
Okay. Well, that's pretty cool. So can you introduce yourself in case someone does not know you in a couple of sentences, maybe, and also what InEvent does?
Of course, yeah, I'm Pedro. I'm founder, currently CEO of InEvent, and we are an event tech company. So we develop mostly technologies for conferences and companies that are hosting their annual events. We work a lot with government and technology companies, basically supplying them like the badges, the ticketing systems, like the email systems, all those things that you get when you go to a conference.
So in some kind of way, like a horizontal enterprise as it gets service all the way up to governments.
That's right.
Okay.
I think in the event space, at least, like you need a lot of labor. It's more expected than other solutions. So it's very much something that we have to provide, like all the labor, all the configurations, all the on-site support. So we have to actually to travel to be with our clients and do those things with them. So it's our enterprises high end, I would say.
I cannot wait to talk about it because I already took a couple of notes, even though we haven't even started. But before we get started, what do people get wrong about you once they get to know you?
So usually people think when I talk about event technology, they ask how many parties I do, and do you go to Tomorrowland? Like you drink all night? Like do you work in the evenings? Like, so they think that I think it's nice. Like if you have a business around, party for kids, I think it's pretty nice. Like I know a family member that does that and they make a lot of money. So, but that's what people assume. And I have to explain, no, like we do government for people as prestigious as US presidents, and that's something that we have to clarify this assumption usually.
That's a really interesting one. So one of the reasons why I wanted to talk to you and why we invited you also to the podcast is unironically because of the GDPR, SOC 2, and ISO 27001 awards. Because the moment I read those, I was sure that you're actually selling to enterprise. And when I started to dig a little bit, I actually saw it. So tell me really quickly, why would you be so uncool and straight up sell to enterprise companies? Because InEvent this is a sizable size, right? Like it is a relatively big business already, right? Like you're also, this is not just a seed startup anymore. The times with Y Combinator are also 4 years behind you when you actually started to make your first pitch, I think, or even 5 years even. Why would you sell to enterprises? And when did you kind of believe like, hey, like maybe this is working, like maybe we don't have to go more down market or like more up market? Like, how did this come to me?
Yeah, it's a great question. I think the drive that we always had in our company has been for higher retention. And that has always been our pursuit. And what we found is that as we went more enterprise, the retention got better. So we have been trying to focus on these type of clients because just it's better retention. The issue with the smaller clients is that sometimes they do not renew every year because they're changing platforms or their conference doesn't go well one year, for example, because they didn't sell enough tickets, or they had, like, it's very sometimes unpredictable, the medium size contract. So we like to go somewhere enterprise because they're more reliable. They have pre-approved budgets that go a couple of years already in advance. So then that allows us to actually have a more stable and recurring contract. Yeah.
So when you talk about an enterprise event, what kind of dimension are we talking about? How many people are usually, or like what kind of a size are we talking about in general?
So it varies. Like sometimes, like as small as 500 people. We have some companies that there are, I would say, actually 3 to 500. But then we have some large organizations. We have some customers that are like 20,000 people, like the government and some of the Fortune 500 companies. So these can get pretty large. Although we're not working sometimes with the entire company. Sometimes it's usually a department that they have a specific need, and we are providing services directly to them so they can work that with their clients. Yeah.
So all of this sounds from the outside like it has absolutely nothing to do with SaaS, but you're also offering end-to-end solutions in terms of integrations, like stuff that is actually necessary to run an event. Basically, everything to kind of run an event. What is the typical kind of, for lack of better word, like what is the job that you're trying to solve for these companies? Is it to run their communities? Are these more like internal events? Like what is your main benefit outside of like an event is also a tool for something, right? Like, so what do they try to achieve?
Yeah, it's a great thing. So this is a great question. So the government is something that usually they already have it's basically their function, right? They have to represent their citizens, or they have to create gatherings where people are able to discuss important things, right? Discuss every single type of, things that government will do to produce laws and establish, types of regulations and more. So we're able to provide systems so these gatherings can happen either in person, online, and we automate things so they don't have to do this manual labor there. But when it comes to the corporate side, usually these are companies that are not really making money out of tickets. They're usually using those conferences to actually promote their products. So they use the conference to allow people to come. Usually they charge the cost of the event, like for the food, for the venue, and hotels, usually on the ticket cost. And then they use this opportunity to actually promote their products, right? They want people to learn about their products. Usually they have very complex products that they're selling, and they want the customers to know, to have peer groups and do those things. And that's mainly the function that we serve for.
So in this value chain,
it's a value chain. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So let's say in this entire value chain of me having a very complex product, I'm just assuming, right? Like, because usually enterprises are also selling to other enterprises quite commonly. But like, let's say I have a complicated product and I come to you and I say like, hey, like we have the budget. We want to organize something for like 10, 15,000 people, whatever. Like they usually know probably the target audience and where they want to hold them also regionally and so forth. So in this entire value chain from like, hey, I want to promote this to the event and then to after, like, where is your business and how do you look at this in terms of how is this defensible against, let me just ask a very stupid example, a normal web platform that is out there and then an event hoster that, or like a caterer or like, like some kind of agency that does it, because you're not just an agency, right? Like you're offering much, much more than this. How do you differentiate yourself there?
Yeah, I think like agencies, for example, they're great partners of ours because they're able to take that and deploy very quickly, like the services, like labor and more. What the clients have, I think, is that the expectations when it comes to event technologies are very high. So people expect, I'll give you like an example. Like they expect that the platform will be translated in 5 languages, right? So you certainly can do that with AI and have a system that will be able to translate automatically in that. But it's some types of resources that you expect to already be built there, like to already be available. And you're not willing to pay, 5 translators, like 100 hours each to do their work to translate the system that you built. So if the agency is starting from zero, right, they'll have to do all this labor to get the system to where you want. And for example, companies like ours that we have been building for 10 years, they are already built and we can sell that for an affordable price compared to others that will have to build this custom for you. So the defensible thing is that we are able to have product that we can reuse from the past few years and just give this in a more affordable way for the client. I think that's the key. Yeah.
So I would think that in this particular segment, it's not just about having something, It's also about having it at a specific quality. And I would just assume that before you can even pitch something to your first enterprise client, and I would love to understand like who was your first kind of close, or like whether you have something that you were like, like these are the typical kind of inhibitors. Usually when we close enterprise logos, we need to have some kind of track record that we are going to be around in the next 5 years or however long this entire journey goes, that we have done something for others, like this catch-22 problem. You probably need having some insurance. You need to have some kind of trust that you can also build up. It's not just about the insurance, but also like they don't want anything to go wrong. And then these bloody certifications. This is quite expensive. So let's say, I think you raised, is it 4 million, 5 million? I think you raised like 4 to 5 million in your initial seed. How much of this money and how much of your energy do you feel like went into the boring stuff of the business, where it was just like, hey, these are the certifications, this is the stuff that needs to happen, this is the partnerships that we're building up, before you even had your first kind of product that you could ship?
So I think that most of the things that we do, like we have one investor that tells us like the boring things is where you make money, right? So you got to work on the boring things first and then you do the fun things. So I'd say that we learned that lesson and we have been able to do that. And it's a very long-term strategy, right? Unfortunately, like I started from zero, like, and I say this just because that was where I was. And I went to the first contract, and then the first contract allowed me some wiggle room, and I used that to get another client and another client. And then I kept improving. And then I had some money for insurance. So I purchased insurance, and then I could get better clients. And then with better clients, I had more money. So it's a long-term thing where you're using your own money from revenue that you're charging clients to buy and reinvest on the business and just keep growing, right? And then have money to hire another person, then another person. And it takes a lot of time. Like, for example, we were only able to get our first round of investment from Y Combinator because we had few clients already in our pipeline and we were able to prove, hey, our system works. I don't think we would be able to get that investment if we're just starting from an idea, right? So I think those things compound. Like if that's your long-term plan to build a company in 10 years, like you can definitely get there. But it was definitely not easy to get this done all in 1 year. It would not be easy to do that. Yeah.
It is very interesting to me as well. Like if I look at your website, which is usually an amalgamation of like what happened in the last couple of years and it changed a little bit and so forth. So even though you're probably one of the most enterprise kind of solutions that I have ever had on the podcast, I think the cheapest version that you still offer right now is I think $9,000 per year. And that's just like, like the very, very basic kind of on the platform and so forth. This is not about hybrid events or anything. It's just like to have this annual subscription. So even you have a pricing page in some kind of way, but a lot of your stuff that you have as well is going in towards this trust. So, like, hey, like these are our events, these were our partners that we worked with and so forth, like the classical kind of thing that you would do with enterprise customers. How important do you think it is that you are showing relatively quick? And I would also be interested in the sense of like, maybe this also happens in your sales calls that you have. How important is it that you show, not testimonials, but like a lot of the stuff is recorded that you do, so you can probably also show it. Like, how important is it for you that you can show this to the client? And like, what do they want to know about these before they even are willing to talk to you any further? Like, what are usually the typical hurdles that you feel like need to get built down, so to speak?
I feel today that the client doesn't even ask that anymore to us. Like I feel that they just do their own research and they come up with their own assumptions before even getting to the first call. Because at least from my point of view, I think people don't trust salespeople in general. Like they think that we're always going to lie, which is, it's sometimes true. Like I'm not saying that this bias is completely unjustifiable. I think that sometimes happens and salespeople are selling you more stuff that they have. The thing is, what they're going to do is that independent platforms like Capterra, G2, and others, they're going to be doing that work before you even get to the first meeting. And when they come to you, they already know the reputation that you have, right? They already know who you have served. Maybe they want more specific details, like I want you to provide me with a reference for a company in the UK that is a university, right? So they want to check that you've done business with them. But I would say that they already have a very high trust criteria into you. They already think that you're going to be a good business and everything. Otherwise, they don't even get to the booking page. They don't even get to convert you as an SQL, as a lead.
It's pretty crazy to me because I feel like right now in the last years, this qualification of word of mouth is also extremely strong. I'm actually not that sure how many people are still going to Capterra. I mean, sure, I mean, it's an additional kind of data point and so forth. I get it. I understand. But review tampering is also not that hard and so forth. But I still think that maybe a lot of people who are still also on these events that you might also be co-organizing in some kind of way, event organizers in corporate environments know each other because they also go to events that are for them and so forth. And then word makes the round, especially if you left a good impression. So I would even say, because normally we talk about like, oh, in the enterprise space, this does not happen. And I just don't agree. I think your brand is actually everything, exactly to combat what you just said, which is usually driven by incentive plans where a salesperson gets more money if they sell you more, which hopefully like is not your strategy. So let me just ask you now one question as well. When you're selling also over sales, like your entire structure that you have, like how many salespeople do you have?
We have about 5 salespeople.
Okay. So you have about 5 salespeople. How are they incentivized?
They have commissions and such.
So also commissions on closings, like the bigger they subscribe, the bigger amount of, how do you make sure that they're not overselling clients? Because you're also dependent on the good word of mouth. Like, did you have any learnings in this regard? Like, how did you get started with this?
So the process is so there are two things. The first one is that, yeah, there is an incentive for people to sell this for as much as possible, but there is also a very competitive environment right there, right? So if they go to the client and say like a product that costs you $9,000, they go and say, look, that's going to cost you $200,000. The client would be like, no, I'll buy from someone else, like a compatible product that's going to be for a lower fee. So the market itself auto-regulates currently, and especially markets like ours, there's a lot of competition. It's very hard for you to be, working on these practices where it's, out of bounds, or they're not able to do that. The second thing is customers, they know the pricing, right? So when you talk to someone else, you know how much your competitor are paying, and you know how much your colleagues in the same industry are paying. So if you get a quote for the same product that someone's paying 9,000 and you get charged 15, they get back to us and say like, why am I being charged 15 for this? And I think this should be charged at 9. So I don't think there is any space for you to hide, specifically these days in the internet. Like everything is available, everything is public.
And I think the interesting thing is as well, like if you're talking on that level to any enterprise company, you usually have to deal with a specialist. Like whether you're speaking to the CMO or like to a director of marketing or whoever is going to organize this stuff, either the company, I mean, I would just assume, I would go out on a limb and say like 99% of your clients, this is not their first event that they have organized. They have already done some other stuff before. So now they have some experience on, first of all, the pricing, but also like what they do not want to happen beforehand. So either the company did something before or the person that is now bringing something new into the company because of what the successor, like the predecessor did and so forth has changed. And this brings me now to a question because I also saw it on your LinkedIn profile. I think you were talking about going above expectations. So we've talked about a very standard offer so far, at least not that your product is standard, but like I'm just saying like, from the outside, it looks like, hey, like I want to run an event and I'm taking the cheapest thing. How do you think about exceeding expectations, and how do you know which differentiators or parts of your product should actually exceed expectations so we can go a little bit lower with the rest?
That's a great question. I think it's based on customer feedback, at least from our industry. Like what we have understood is that there are 5 major things that we need to be good at. The first one is website development. So the ability to create beautiful websites very quickly. Badge printing. So nice badges, colorful in different layouts, everything. A great mobile app. A very powerful registration system. So options to book hotels and flights and pay in different ways and everything. And the fifth thing is stream services. It's a more recent thing from the pandemic, like the ability to host virtual events and more. So these are the 5 things that we try to work every day in our company, improve those 5 main products. And they seem like something that you, like, I think I told this someone once, like the forum, for example, they said, I can build this in a weekend. And I told them, like, we have been building this for 12 years and it's not ready yet. Like it's so customized, the different workflows that clients want to build there. So it's something that's really complex. But I would say that on top of those 5 things, we have like things like AI and automations and everything. But the core is like building those 5 things really well and getting the clients to like it and getting their feedback to be really what's built into the product. Yeah.
So I think this is interesting because the upper end of the market that we serve at GodPhoto, which is Shopify basically for photographers, is we are also combining the digital kind of world with the print labs in real life, right? Like that are printing then also the photography, like the pictures which are connecting then also to the photographers who take pictures of people also in real life. And I feel like this is a very defensible business model, like in general, because it is so difficult to kind of set up. You have to deal with so many different countries and so forth, also like to your point before. But I would say that specifically for what you just described, this is kind of like a collection of, I don't want to call it features, but like, let's just call it features for lack of a better word. Like a feature would be like fast web, mobile application, and so forth. But I think the advantage that you get as a business offering in a sense is that it all comes from you, meaning it works together. Because it is easy for me to find some kind of mobile app. I can run my event Q&A probably with Slido. It's not a problem. The problem is that when the event is happening, it's like a flight in a plane. It should not go wrong exactly in this particular hour. It cannot go wrong. It can go wrong at all other times, but not at this particular event, right? So like trust in that sense is also extremely important.
I think that people focus on the things that they find most valuable and they want the best of the best in every single category that they work with. So for them, it's more important to have the best questions app, the best networking app, the best registration system. And they prefer to combine, maybe 7, 8 solutions and use integrations to put them all together than to have one single system that has not the best of the best, the cream of the cream in terms of technology for each of those segments. So it comes now to integrations. Maybe you can offer like a product that's going to offer 4 or 5 things really well, and then you need to complement the remaining with integrations, and then you have a very serious and very strong offering for this industry that we work with. Yeah.
So, but 10 minutes ago, I said that you're probably acquiring customers that already have done something else with a different provider or like with some segmented stuff, like where they just like, they do different things. What do you think are your competitors fucking up the most? Because usually opportunity lives where other people make mistakes. And you can only actually acquire a market if you, as you said, also like exceed expectations. But expectations can only be exceeded if they are not fulfilled in the first place. So where do you feel like your competition for whoever your competition is? It doesn't need to be like the exact same products, but like whatever your competition is, whether it's an internal event agency or whether it is like a bigger event agency that combines others. What do they get wrong that you are not getting wrong?
I don't think there is one single factor. Like we try to narrow it down to one single thing. Like that's the one thing that we're killing it, and that's it. Right? But we never found it like to be such a divisive, 90% of our business strategy. What we found is there's a series of things. Like for example, the fact that we're leading on AI while the other event tech companies are not doing that, or the fact that we work with clients and we have certain certifications in certain industries that nobody else has, or our presence in a given countries that a few people also have. So I think it's a combination of all these different things. And once you put all that together, like you create some value where others are not building it. But it's not like I myself, like I like to have very clear thought strategy that I can say, look, like we're winning because of X, right? But we have not been able to come up with that clear, very logical reasoning why the product's winning on so many categories. It's really a combination of very small things that make the product unique at this point in time, at least for this company. Yeah.
Yeah, I think from the outside, it looks like that the sum of all parts are more than the individual parts added together. So now you did it. You said the word AI, and now we have to talk about it. So if I learned anything, and then that any process that involves a really big due diligence, also like in the upper market segments and so forth, they're probably not going to buy anything that has AI on top of it unless it actually does something. Or is at least evaluated, or it's just like an add-on that some kind of salesperson has thrown in and so forth. So what are you using AI for? I think you mentioned, I'm not sure we did it in the pre-talk or right now, but like you're using AI also for like translation and so forth. So what are you using AI for and how do you think about it? Because specifically like before AI and now, because your company was already alive before ChatGPT and the strong language models came about, how did that change your business?
Yeah, it has been, we have been able to drive a lot of automations through the platform. I think the word AI, it's used very freely today. Sometimes like it's machine learning, sometimes it's like automations purely, and people are calling all those things AI. And I think that we fall within that bracket. Like I think that sometimes we use things that are simply automations, we're calling them AI on our marketing, like materials and collateral, like we do that. But the thing is, Most of those things are valuable to our clients. I think that's what drives us. We focus on things that they can use. They're going to be good for the environment. Like we have this release recently, which is like photo match AI, which is like you take photos from a bunch of people on the event, right? And you're going to have these photos with like 30, 40 people. And then the AI works on the photos to tag you, like exactly what Google Photos does, and creates your own album with like your personal photos, where the photos that you're tagged in. And that's really good because it's something that's very valuable for the audience. Like they're able to get this and have their own album there, so their clients like it. And the same thing, we can do that privately, right? Because we can provide data set, which is your picture and the photo set. And that gives you the photos that you're tagged in. It doesn't have to use a model that's like shared among other companies. So the privacy, it's built into the product and allows us to scale. So we like these types of ideas, something that's private, offers value for the client, but it's truly AI. Like it's innovative as ChatGPT, where you type something and they write an email for you. Like I don't think it's on the same level of innovation. I think ChatGPT is more innovative than that. But for us, it's working really well. Like it's providing the things that we want it to do. So it's pretty good. Yeah.
Yeah, I can attest to that fact. Like, I gave a keynote in an event a couple of months ago, and then I received the pictures from the photographer. There were 2,500, just like in a photo bucket. And then I had my assistant just go over everything, and I told her, like, hey, try to find all the pictures where I'm on because I cannot deal with this right now. I think, yeah, while it sounds like a funny thing, this is exactly what you're talking about. It's more about automation. Also, I find it funny that you said like these typical decision tree products where you just like, yes or no, that's not AI, but we just call it AI because, yeah, it sounds stronger. I think this is pretty much on point. So, what I'm very interested in, you have relatively few clients right now. I don't mean that your business is little. I just mean like you have relatively few clients for the revenue that you're making, of course, because they are enterprise, because they're government and so forth. How do you think about quantifying the quality of the interview that you have, which is mostly coming from you, from sales, from individual person meetings with clients and so forth? Probably also some post analysis after events, like, hey, what went well, what did not go so well, and so forth. How do you think about this feedback, and like how do you use it very, very specifically? Like, is there a specific tooling that you use? Like, do you have anything that you also quantify where you just go around and say that, for instance, I don't know, like the participants are giving you a specific rating and then you take that and so forth? Like, how do you think about this?
Well, I think it's a combination. First, you need to have a need, like the client needs your product at a given time. That's a must, right? I think it's really hard to sell something to someone that they're not going to buy it, like they don't have a need right now. Like the top bottom strategy that used to work in the past doesn't work anymore. I think like the people that's going to buy, it's going to be the analyst. It's going to be the actual person that's going to use the product. They're going to say, I need this product, right? I need something that's going to help me fix my problem. So given that the person has a need and they're looking to buy it, then I think you need to create like an entire journey for them that it's online and also in person, right? So you're going to be able to take them to capture them with an ebook, a report, something to download from your website. But you need to also go to trade shows so they can see you in person. They can get some swag from your booth. They, can go on a podcast and listen to you, or they're going to talk to your clients or participate in a peer group or go to dinner. So I think you gotta have all these different options for them to interact with you. And then at one point they buy, right? They buy when they're ready. They already trust you and all those things. Because we did only the first piece really well in the beginning of the company, where we had a very good conversion funnel for them to go from like Google to our website and put their info and capture who they are. But then like our conversion rate on the sales side was really poor because we had all these leads, great leads, great companies, but nobody would buy from us. And then we figured out that it's because like our competitors, they're hosting all these dinners and trade shows and we're doing none of it. So they don't trust us as much. They know, like we had a meeting with them, but they're saying, I'm going to go with them because I never had the chance to connect with you in person, right? So working on the second part of the pipeline, the trust build up, is also really important, at least I think.
I love this so much. So one of the things that we say in sales usually is that you cannot conquer territory without having any boots on the ground, which sounds very military, I know, but like this is usually what we do, right? So like if you say like, hey, I'm doing a geo expansion, we want to conquer America, like we're just a European business, you need to have people in America that are also willing to just travel around. Even myself as a solopreneur, I do travel to clients and potential leads that are not my clients yet, just to shake hands and see them in person. It is so incredibly powerful. And I 100% agree with you also, like in GTM on enterprise, even though everything that you said is true about salespeople, that we do not trust them inherently, that's not what this is about. You still need to have some kind of in-person events. I mean, events is something that you are a pro in as well. My question was a little bit in a different direction, though. So what I'm thinking about is that you probably have some kind of roadmap that you want to go forward with in the next year, some things that you put into a backlog and never take forward again. I'm talking about specifically the meetings where things are starting to get a little bit more difficult, where you start to kind of think like, I'm not sure, maybe we should build this integration. You probably also have a lot of decisions that you need to make, whether you want to become, how do I say this, like more of a customizable solution for your clients, which is something that enterprises often ask about, or more of like a general kind of thing. How do you evaluate right now, also in the company, really like from a product management perspective, what you want to build and what not? I'm very specifically interested always when I have people like you on like, how do you kind of pull this qualitative feedback into the realm of numbers? Is it just a pure feeling from the founder? Is it the product managers? How do you quantify this?
Yeah, going back to the first thing that I said, I think we quantify everything around retention. Like we think about the effort and how much retention that's going to like increase in our company. So when we think about integrations as a whole already are valuable because there is an effort to doing integration always, even if it's like plug and play, you have to click connect and you do not have the permission. So someone will have to do. So you think, I'm going to change platforms. I have to do all these integrations and connections again. No, I'm going to stay with them. So that's already like a small barrier that's good for us. But the second thing is I think about integrations as how complex they are and how much retention they're going to bring because how complex they are. Like, for example, some payment systems, they're unique to some government institutions or sometimes to certain segments of like associations. So once you build that integration, like, and they connect, the integration alone requires 3 months to be completed because it's very custom. Like it has so many manual labor that you have to connect the certificates. They're not automated. Like everything needs to be uploaded. Like it's a very complicated process.
You wait for them to confirm and so forth.
So for me, that's a win, right? Because like you're gonna do this once and you're not gonna touch this for another 3-5 years, right? While all the integrations are so easy to disconnect and not that valuable, sometimes it's just a one-off thing that we think maybe that's not such a valuable integration as the other one, So that's usually how we're measuring it. It's about retention, and we have those mapped already. Like we have internally, like this client uses this integration, their average retention is X. And if they use these other integrations, it's Y. So we just measure this on, and we know like categories of integrations around payment are better than other categories, right? So that's how we work around it. It's basically the metrics of retention.
That is true. And it's funny that you're saying this. I had to laugh before when you said payment services, because payment services are in general a pain in the ass, even if you do not deal with government or like regulated contracts in general. I'm sure my finance tech PM is also listening to this, Alexi, and he said, like, I think 2 weeks ago, it's just a button. We just have to enable it in Stripe and then it's going to work. Nothing ever works in any payments provider with just like flicking the button. It never works. And then you're busy again with support and these manual processes because also on their side, it's the same. They also have regulations and so forth. But this is exactly where the business exists, where we kind of make money in some weird way because legal regulations are just a little bit weird. Do you feel like, how do you think about the difference in your business between the US and Europe? Like Europe is usually much more regulated when we talk about GDPR, like general data protection and so forth. And the US, like, how do you think about these two businesses?
Well, I think it's a combination. Although like the US moves more quickly in terms of business, I would say the regulations in Europe makes the retention in Europe better, right? So it's a combination. Like I like both. Like they have their benefits and they have their distractions as well. But one thing about Europe that makes it really complicated is all the different languages and cultures and everything that's so different between each other. Like of course there's the euro and everything, but the regulations, like you go to sell to a client in Germany is way different than selling for someone in the UK and another person in Portugal. Like they speak completely different languages. They have different expectations when it comes to compliance. And also, so it's not that easy. Like the US is just like one big block and it's easier to sell everywhere, but it's also more competitive. So it varies.
It's funny, like because just like yesterday, I thought again that cookie banners just suck so much. Like it's like this running joke in European websites that you just have to accept that. Oh, I'm so glad you remind me for like the millionth time that there is a cookie that is tracking all my actions.
Just on that, there is a Google extension that I installed, Google Chrome, like accept all my cookies, or I don't care about cookies. I think that's it. So you install it and then it accepts all the cookies for you automatically.
I will probably install that. But what I wanted to get at is that I think you were the person that framed it the nicest, that it sucks to do business in Europe. Because it's not a well defendable market too. Like it's just so hard to do innovation as well here. But like, especially if you compete on markets where something can be created in the US and then sold in Europe, that does not have to work with too many regulations, because we also have regulations on the more practical side, right? Like, labor protections and so forth. Not that I'm saying these are wrong, by the way, right? Like I actually think that the US is in many, many ways wrong. But obviously this changes how a company is evaluated as well as an investment. So it matters a great deal whether you're founding a company that does exactly the same in Germany versus in the US. Even if the numbers are exactly the same, the investment hypothesis starts to change just because of how the law is working and so forth. And that's just a reality that we have. Did you ever struggle with this, like where you should found the company, and like, or maybe different question, how much did it change from your original vision that you had, like the first pitch deck that you brought up at Y Combinator, and like right now where you are?
I think the US market, it's the number one today in terms of market size, just because it's such a vast market and there is so much wealth in America. And that's something that attracts a lot of people. So people are more motivated, and even though it's more competitive, there is that space there. There is also a little bit the American way, I would say. Like people look and say, oh, this is an American product, it must be good. Like I get this feedback from people saying like, hey, like if you build this product and you're number one in America, like you're probably the number one product worldwide. So this helps with our brand as well, especially for other countries like Latin America, Asia Pacific, and those guys. That's something that's really well recognized. Maybe not so much in Europe. I mean, what really changed over the years is that it became really complex, our operation, way more complex than I thought. Today, it's so many different things going on at the same time, not just like software wise, but like labor and people and hardware and warehouses and things moving around in partnerships. And it's so many things moving at the same time that I never thought would happen on such a coordinated effort and everything. And we need so many compliance systems to make sure everything's working well, that people are not making a mistake. Because if one person makes one mistake and this mistake's not caught in time, like that's going to affect the client experience in the end. And so it's a challenge.
You have such nice words for when things go really, really wrong. So I have a question. Like, if you think about expanding the business right now, and I'm not just like talking about like getting more clients, but like, where is your product market fit expansion going to happen? If you feel like, okay, okay, we have an end-to-end kind of event management thing. Like, what do you think is the next thing that you're going to do? Are you just going to, of course, you're going to perfect your offering that you have and so forth, but is there something where you feel like, hey, like we could also start to grab this particular space that is adjacent to us? Is it, or like changing industries that are not, I don't know. There's so much weird stuff out there in the world. I want to ask this openly. What is your next expansion that you feel like you're going to try out?
Yeah, I think we're looking at investing more on like in-person operations and support operations, like people and hardware and things that we can actually be closer to the client even more. Like sometimes we only have locations that are far away from the client, so we're looking at opening more locations, even though we have 7. Like we want to advance this even more. And being closer and local to them is really something that's really important. And that's really it's something that's very hard to do, like because you have to work with the regulations locally and have this well strategized. And if you make a mistake, and it cannot change so quickly. Like if you launch the product and you change something, you can do that in one day. But it's like regulations and offices and real things and physical things, like you actually have to wait 3, 6, 12 months to get the feedback cycle. So that's where we want to invest. That's where we want to make a difference. And there's a lot of space, a lot of room for growth there, because most of the competitors are not doing that as well.
I also think because the internet is starting to get so generic, I honestly think that. I'm not just a doomer. I mean, I always am a doomer in my content, but I honestly think right now that a lot of the stuff is getting much more generic. Like AI is just consuming AI content and then spitting out more AI and so forth. It's kind of like, I think it's called like the death of the internet or something. What's going to happen anyway? So the defensibility anyways of any market is going to be in the real media, which means in-person events or doing something hybrid as you were doing as well, I feel like. And I honestly think that the thing that killed outbound outreach en masse was the perfection of it. What I mean is that, like AI can now imitate everyone. It will look perfect. It will speak perfect. It has the perfect pitch and nothing will convert anymore because everybody's bombarded constantly with this kind of garbage. And that means you need to find different go-to-market strategies. It's the same as that happened with banner advertisements that started to work really well when they were new back in the days. And then at some point, it's just like nobody's using them anymore.
Yeah, I think like everybody expects that the tech is really easy these days. Like you're just going to build something and, going to be driving a lot of revenue very quickly. I think it depends on you finding the niche that you like. And, you got to have some luck, I would say, or like a vision that nobody has, because usually almost everything already has a category already, people working on it. It's very hard for you to start something where nobody else is doing it. Like you probably gonna have to compete, and the prices are quite low, especially for the companies that already have some scale. It's very hard to compete. Yeah.
Yeah. Everything is commoditized from every side. It's easier to create a product that doesn't look like ass. It's very easy. I think the challenge in most of the companies right now is on the go-to-market side because the size of the market didn't change. The only way that you can divide it up is by going more vertical. And that is something that people really need to understand. This is why horizontal companies have it quite hard. And this is also why I like that you're not trying to serve everyone, but rather like staying on your upper segment. And that makes a lot of sense. Pedro, thank you very much for joining me today. I think this was a fantastic conversation. I really love talking enterprise. And do you want people to get in contact with you? And if so, where should they contact you?
Yeah, of course. If you want to get in touch or just follow, I post on LinkedIn every week or so. My name is there, Pedro Goés from InEvent, and also Twitter. If you want to follow some insights that I share every now and then from event tech and also enterprise. Yeah.
That sounds really good. And I'm running a lot of hybrid events, but I think I'm under your pricing limit. So I think I need to grow a little bit more. So I'm going to talk with sales about it. But thank you so much for joining today. This was great.
Thank you. Thanks so much. Yeah.
Boom. That's it. Thank you so much for listening to The Product Tea with Lea. If you don't have enough yet, you can subscribe to my podcast right now at Apple Podcasts or Spotify, or you can head to my website, leatarin.com, which is leahtharin.com, where you can find much more of my material or just want to work with me.